I'm sure a lot of people are thinking about splitting the Indomitus box into two separate halves and splitting the cost between them. Today we'll discuss about what I think is the most fair way to do this when taking into account the value of the rulebook as well. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy focused 40k channel, where we're all about getting the most out of our miniatures on the tabletop, and also the most miniatures on the tabletop for the least amount of money. Now, the new Indomitus box that is going on sale this weekend is certainly going to sell like hotcakes. It's a very good deal indeed compared with Games Workshop's normal prices, and has an entire set of completely new models with very nice sculpts to boot. If you are buying the box and are only interested in one of the factions, that's either going to be a bit of wasted money, or you could resell it on eBay or a local group. The other option is to find someone who's interested in the other half of the box and work out a deal to divide up the miniatures. In this video we'll talk about the two halves of the Indomitus box and their relative value, and then talk about how much value I would ascribe to the book, so if one person is keeping the book, then how much they should probably pay for it in my opinion. So if we look first at the two different halves of the miniatures in the box, we have the Necrons and the Space Marines. Both sides are packed with some pretty awesome new sculpts, and to me the two halves do feel fairly balanced. In terms of numbers of models, the Marines are outnumbered. You'll only get 24 Marines in the box to 37 Necrons, but would bear in mind that the average Primaris Marine is really quite a mighty warrior all on their own. They're really quite chunky, and particularly so for the Gravis armour and the Outrider bikes. The Necrons do have considerably more models and do have a vehicle and that big Scorpec Lord, but on average the models are quite a lot smaller. Those warriors are far smaller than Primaris Marines, and they also have some other small units such as that Plasma Sight and the Scarab Swarms as well. In general, in terms of amount of plastic you get on both sides, I think it is at least relatively balanced. They also seem to be pretty much equivalent in points. The Marines are pretty much confirmed to be 1,000 points on the nose, as per some leaked point values that we got from the new chapter approved, and while we've not seen an actual screenshot of the Necron points, they're rumoured to be 983 points, based on leaks that came out in free text around the same sort of time. It's pretty good because it means that both sets of the box will give you a pretty much equal boost towards the process of getting an army together. In general, if you're looking at actual value of the models, then the Marines probably are slightly higher to be fair. While Games Workshop might charge the same for the models from their web store if they're all out available individually later. In general, Space Marines are just more applicable to a lot more armies, and lots of people already have collections of them, so therefore will have more demand. It happened fairly similar with the Dark Imperium box. If you wanted to buy half the box on eBay, you'd typically be paying somewhere around £45 to £50 for the Primaris Marines, and generally a little bit under £40 for the Death Guard. Again, they were at least two reasonably balanced forces, but I think it was mainly the increased demand from Space Marine players that made the Primaris side of the box sell for a fair bit more, just due to having more Space Marine players than there are Death Guard. Rules-wise, it does appear that the Space Marine models are a bit stronger at the moment, though of course we will have to wait for the Necron Codex to really judge their worth. The Space Marine raw stats just look very impressive on paper, particularly those new Eradicators, which are ludicrously cheap anti-tank and very tough to boot. The Outrider bikes also seem incredibly solid, with a decent number of close combat attacks, very fast and not bad shooting either. The Necron models aren't awful in terms of competitiveness. The Scorpec destroyers in particular look quite interesting, but a few of the units just seem a little bit underwhelming. Things like the Plasmancer and that Canoptic Reanimator just don't seem overwhelming for how many points you pay. In general though, rules and points do change. Space Marines have been doing very well for themselves this year, but for most of 8th edition they languished in the fairly underwhelming sort of category, so it's certainly not guaranteed that one side will be stronger for the entire edition. All this aside, if I was splitting the box between a Necron and a Space Marine player, I would ascribe both of these forces equal value, despite the disparities in numbers of models and what might resell slightly higher at a later date. The slightly more interesting question though is how much this book is worth when compared with the rest of the armies, and this one is a bit of a trickier question to be honest, because we can buy the book separately, but we can't actually buy the miniatures separately at the moment, and again the actual value for how much something is worth is generally driven more by supply and demand, so the exact amount that Games Workshop sell them for isn't necessarily going to be reflective of this. In general, at the launch of 9th edition, the book will be worth as much as it ever will be. Obviously no one has it yet, so demand is going to be very high, but as multiple copies get distributed, with people buying big value sets such as this, there'll be less demand for it, and people might even have multiple copies and be wanting to sell them off, say if they did pick up 2 copies of the Indomitus box to get more models. It might have a tiny bit more value as it has this limited edition cover, but I'm honestly not too convinced how much that's going to be the case, seeing as they have made absolutely tons of this box, so it's not exactly going to be the most limited thing in the world. They have confirmed that the rulebook will be selling for $65, where compared with the Indomitus box going for $200, but I personally wouldn't fall into the trap of assuming that the rulebook is literally 1/3 of the value of the box. The box when taken as a whole will have a discount compared with what those models will be worth individually, and in reality that discount is pretty much shared out between everything else in the box, as you have to buy it all together. It means by buying the Indomitus box as well as getting the armies at a discount, you'll be getting the book at a discount, so I'd give it a lower value than the amount that it's sold for separately. I think that probably the easiest way to judge how much the book is worth is to compare it to how much it was selling for second hand when compared with the Dark Imperium armies. When people started to sell off bits of the box that they didn't want last time, the book tended to go fairly cheaply comparative to the armies, probably just because of the way that people might want 2 armies, but they won't generally want 2 books. And at least in the UK, the Primaris Marines tended to go over for a bit over £40, the Death Guard for a bit under £40, and the book tended to go for £20 or maybe a little bit less. It meant the rulebook from the Dark Imperium box was roughly half the value of the cost of any one of the armies. Overall, if I was splitting the box myself, I basically just ascribed the book to be 20% of the value of the box and 40% for each one of the armies. So if I was in the US, I'd pay $40 for the book and $80 for each one of the armies. So if one player just wanted one of the armies, then I think it would be fair to let that one go for $80 and the other person pay the other $120 if they do get to keep the book. If the box is £120 in the UK, then the same formula would work out to about £24 for the book and £48 for each army. And to be honest, I think that this works out quite well when compared with what Games Workshop said about the value of the box. They said that the models will be discounted by at least 50% compared with buying them separately. $65 to going to $40 is not so far from a 50% drop, so I think this works out quite well by that calculation as well. I'm not sure the exact specifics really matter all that much. A few pounds or dollars either way isn't going to make too much difference when compared with buying a fairly expensive box set like this, but for the expense that you put in, I think that this one's a really quite good deal either way. Let me know your thoughts on the subject and what you think would be fair, particularly if you are planning to split the box yourself. If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics. I'll certainly be doing a few more videos on the box over the course of the next week. If you'd like to help support the channel, I'd just like to mention that I do have an Element Games link down in the video description below. If you live in the UK and were thinking about picking up the Indomitus box, or any other models in the near future, Element Games is a discount retailer that does 10 to 20% off Games Workshop's products. If you click the link in the video description before making an order, then a small amount of the profits goes to Auspex Tactics without costing you any more at all when you actually buy. If you live in the USA or Canada, then I have a similar Amazon affiliate link down in the video description. That works in pretty much exactly the same way. If you do click the link, then any purchases made on Amazon within the next 24 hours have a little bit go to support the channel, and it doesn't cost you any more whatsoever. So it can just be a way to help support the channel on purchases that you might have made anyway. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.